and welcome to my channel. Today we are going to talk about how to create a flow given the business case, and I'm going to walk you through most of the basic flow elements which you will be using in your future use cases. I did a video a while back on a process builder and flow combination. This is more of a deep diving into flow only. I just wanted to share this video to share what I know about flow. Also, this is going to be a little longer video than my other videos, so bear with me here. If you want to feel comfortable, grab a coffee or tea and let's get started with me. Okay, so first of all, let me explain what is our use case for today. So the use case is anytime an opportunity is closed with a closed won stage, what needs to happen is a contract needs to be created. Just one contract needs to be created for that opportunity with a status of draft, and all the other fields on contracts should be populated by account field. So if I go on the contract record itself, it needs to have a lookup account, and it also needs to have billing address pulled from account record of that opportunity. Okay, and let's just keep it simple for now. These two are fine. Okay, and also another part to this flow is that along with the contract, what also needs to happen is the contact role from opportunity needs to be created again on contract. So this is opportunity contact role, and then there is something called, if I go back to the contract contact roles, that's a related list also, and it's a junction. So the same contact need to be created here also. Okay, so there could be many ways to do it. It is definitely possible using an Apex trigger and a bunch of for loops, Apex code. If you are expert in that, you can do this using Apex. But this is a flow video, obviously, so we're going to see how to do it using a flow. It cannot be done alone by process builder because there are multiple complexity here, and the process builder is just not capable of doing that. But one thing I want to say is that the flow will be triggered by the process builder, because this should only trigger when a stage is closed won, right? So what you're going to do is create a process builder and then call the flow from there. So whenever this is closed won, the process builder will be triggered. That will call the flow, and the flow will have all the logics related to creating the contract, creating the contact roles. Okay, fair enough. So let's first of all, before starting any flow, step one is to visualize how the process is going to look like. Okay, so you can use your Scratch, a rough book, or an actual whiteboard and start drawing the process, because once you have an idea of how the process is going to be, the flow becomes a lot simpler than going in the system directly and trying to figure it out. Okay, so I'm using this free online whiteboard just for the purpose of this tutorial. So, well, the first thing that needs to happen is that we need to have we need a element that needs to pass ID, right? So opportunity ID needs to come here, and this needs to look up, grab a text here, not there. So this is going to be our first element, so it has to be a fast lookup. I will tell you the difference between what is record lookup and what is fast lookup. So any lookup, but what needs to be done is we need to get a lookup, just like it's SQL, right? We are querying for some object, a record. So we are querying an opportunity based on the ID, and then what do we need from there? We need the account ID. Okay, why do we need account ID? Because we need to grab all the fields from account in order to pass that field to the contract. Okay, so next what's gonna happen is we just pass that value and get another lookup. Okay, don't worry about it, it's fast lookup or record lookup, doesn't matter for now. But somehow we need to get all the account fields, correct? So we need to get all the account fields, and let's call it account fields lookup. So we are looking up the account fields, and what next? Once we are done getting the account fields, we also need to get all the contact roles, because that's what we need to get all the contact roles from opportunity, because we need to pass it to the contract. So let's get another lookup, and that will be for, make an arrow there, pardon my drawing here, I'm still getting familiar with this. Okay, so we have opportunity contact roles lookup. So we're going to look this up, store it in some variables, right? And then, since opportunity contact roles is going to be multiple, with account it's simple, because it's going, one opportunity will have only one account related to it, so that's account field. But the contact role, once we look it up, what needs to happen is, just like your SOQL, if you are using for SOQL for loop, if you have ever used it, it will be much easier to understand. But if you haven't, I'll try my best to, get that point across. So contact roles, since it is multiple contact roles, we cannot just take this loop, take this list of contact roles and pass it to the contract. That would be great if you could do that, but I haven't figured out a way how we can just directly pass the opportunity contact roles to the contract contact roles, because the opportunity contact roles only will have two fields, that is your contact ID and opportunity ID. Now what we need to do is create a loop, and within that loop, once you have the list of values, contact roles, we're going to create a loop, and then looping through that, we're going to pass it and assign it to another we are going to assign it to another list of IDs, basically. So what's going to happen, I'll show you, it will get much clearer once we get in the flow. But let's just say for now that we just want it to loop, because it's multiple and we cannot directly pass. So I'm going to say loop through it. Alright, so let's leave it there. Let's forget this part for a second, okay? Come back to the account fields lookup. So we have that account field lookup. Now what should we do? Now we have all these values, right? What is the next step? Well, the next step will obviously be to create the contract, right? So I'm going kind of bypassing this for now. In the actual flow, we will need that. It kind of goes this way, but let's see what happens here. Since we are creating, we are not updating anything, we are creating, right? So we take a create element from the flow. So take a create element, and then we'll create contact, just like that. Contract creation. And once that is created, we also want to populate it, just for an idea's sake. We just want the contact roles to be created, right? contact roles are created. Now we will get into how they are created, because again there is one element I want to introduce you here, is because the flow itself runs, all these processes takes place at once. Like, it's a flow, right? It comes from here, it starts here, and then it goes and does everything, and at the end your transaction is completed. Okay, but if we want to create contact roles within the same flow, how are we going to get the contract ID to get the contact roles? Because once the contract is created, that's when you are able to create the contact roles, correct? I want to say contact roles. So what we're going to do is there's only two ways we can do that in flow. One, if you're using past interviews, you can pause it and get that, let this create the record, and then you carry on with the rest of the process. And another element is called a wait element. Its name is wait, so it's called a wait element. What it does is it lets you wait for this process. So what's going to happen is this process is not going to start, this part right here, this part is not going to start until the wait element finishes this transaction. That will be configured in the wait. It's pretty easy to use and it's very effective. So wait element will wait for this transaction to complete. Once this is completed, it's going to go back and start this process. So contact roles are then created. So in order for you to know this, I did some Googling, and then I figured out, oh, okay, wait element does this. So if you go here, you should be able to see a wait element. Okay, so you can go through it and read about all about it. Okay, now since we have a basic understanding of what we might expect, let's actually go to the flow itself. Okay, also I told you that I'm going to explain you the difference between fast versus record lookup, or fast create versus create element. What is actually the difference? So the flows can be as simple as like 2 elements, or as complex as multiple elements. But don't let this length of the flow scare you, because once you understand what's actually happening, it's going to be very easy for you to get a hang of it. It just needs more practice. All right, so let's get into the fast lookup. So basically what fast lookup does is, if you create, let me grab one actually to so that I can show you what I'm talking about. So if you grab the fast lookup element, fast lookup basically lets you store a field, a record values, without having to create multiple variables for each field. For example, if I need account fields, right? All I will do is type account, and I'll say, all right, I need account field, and I'll get the standard object here. And then you can also define the criteria, like what account fields you want. You want account fields, great, but what account do you want? So you'll need to say, all right, I need an account whose ID is equal to the account ID of the opportunity, maybe in this case, right? That's what we need. So we can I will show you how to get a value there, but basically we can create an subject variable or use a existing one. Okay, so that's it. That's what it does. And this is where it gets interesting, because since it is a fast lookup, you don't need to define every single field. So what you can do is just get account, maybe create a subject variable. So always a fast lookup is used with an subject variable, but not a simple variable, because simple variable can't have those values, or they can't store all of it at once. But subject and subject collection variables are able to store the field values within it. It's like object, right? Object with all the fields. So Collection variable is used if you are expecting child records. For example, if I wanted all the contacts for that account, what I would use is an subject variable, because it might be more than one contacts. Okay, but if you know for sure there will be only one value for that, that's when we use a subject variable. So if I select a subject variable, I can create one and I can say I want the subject variable of type contact or opportunity, account, whatever you want. You can say it right there. And input and output type. This is very important because so many times what users do is they forget to change this type to input and output, or input or output only, and leave it to private, and they can't access it from process builder or something like that. So I think to start with, you can always make sure it's set up to input and output, so you don't have any confusion of what to use. Okay, so input and output is good. It usually works fine with everything else, so I recommend that. And take the object you want. So that's fast lookup. Now what is lookup? Lookup basically is very similar to fast lookup, but it's more like it just gives you, if I show you here, you have to define every parameter as a variable. So let's say if I say, for the same case, right, if I'm telling I need account, click on account, and then I can say same thing that meets the criteria. We're going to say ID equal to something. That is cool, but assign the record variable to variables that reference in your flow. So you see how here you have field and variable. So let's say I want to save account type maybe. Then I'll have to create a new variable to store that type, and that has to be a text type. If you are storing account date, or there is a date field in account and you want to store that, then you say date. So based on what fields you are selecting, it needs to be of the same data type. Okay, so that's what record lookup does. So as you can already tell that record lookup is useful, but most of the time when you start building flows, you'll be mostly dealing with S object type or fast lookup, because fast lookup or fast create, fast update, as the name says, fast, you don't have to waste time creating all the variables, and it's pretty easy to use that. Okay, not that this is not useful, obviously. So again, if you know record create, record update is pretty much the same, and then record delete, same as record create, is single values, and then we have fast delete, fast lookup, update. Alright, so let's look into what I have in the flow. And one more point I want to mention is, even though it's very basic, always write description, because if you revisit your flow after a few days, you don't want to forget what you did, or maybe your friend, your other colleagues or other administrators or developers want to check it out, so they have it here. So write the description. Okay. All right. So first one is, as we can go to a whiteboard, we need to get the account ID from the opportunity. There is another easy way to do it too, but let's go the long way since I am explaining it to you. So what I'm going to say, look up opportunity that meets the following criteria. ID equals op ID. So what is op ID? It is a variable of type opportunity. Okay, let me show you. You can actually access all the variables from Explorer right here. So these are all the variables. These are collection variables I'm using. These are subject variables I'm using. You don't need to create all of them at once. You can go along the process and hit create new every time. So OOPT, that's a S object type variable, and it's an object type opportunity, obviously. So ID equals, if you are creating it for the first time, hit create new, create a subject variable, and then create whatever name you want to give it. If you want to write description, that's fine. Input and output, and select this object type here, that will be opportunity. Now so this is basically what it is saying is select ID from opportunity. That's all. Select ID from opportunity where ID equals colon this. That's what it is saying. So once we get that ID from opportunity, what do we want to do? We want to get the values of it. So once we get opti ID, it's a